topic I covered not too long ago on the channel was the effects of fame on Radiohead. It got me thinking about how it affected other bands that I'm quite fond of. So today we're looking at the Strokes and how fame impacted the band and the members' lives. Before I get started, over 80% of the people who watch my channel are not subscribed, and we're nearing 1K, so I'd really appreciate the help in getting me there. The Strokes semi-formed in 1997 with Julian Casablancas, Nick Valenci, and Fabrizio Moretti, but by 1998, Nikolai Furture and Albert Hammond Jr. had joined the group. They played small gigs all over New York City for the next 2 years and practiced constantly, and by 1999, early 2000, the band began rehearsing what would become Is This It?, the band's debut album. From these sessions, the band met producer Gordon Raphael, and he helped the band make their first demo, the Modern Age EP. This demo sparked a bidding war for the band, and all the record labels knew these guys would be huge. Eventually, RCA won. By the time 2001 rolled around, the band had finished up recording and were ready to drop their debut album, Is This It? It ended up being delayed in the US due to the original cover and the track New York City Cops, and I'm sure you can guess the reason that track in particular was pulled in 2001. Despite its delayed release, the album received tons of critical praise and is one of the most influential rock albums of the early 2000s. During the early days of the Strokes, Julian struggled with alcohol, stating that he was basically drunk constantly to try and get a confidence boost. But when it started to affect his music, he quit cold turkey, and even after he went sober in 2006, he stated he felt hungover for 5 years. He's been sober since, and he says sometimes misses it, but it's just not worth the trouble. The band was thrust into the limelight after their debut, and to follow up, the band released Room on Fire only 2 years later. Another album met with acclaim, although some reception called it repetitive and too similar to their debut. I personally think Room on Fire rules, screw those critics, but anyways, the album did do well for them, but it would be another 3 years before seeing another album from the band. First Impressions of Earth was released in 2006 and saw mixed reviews, some calling it the weakest release yet, while others did view it positively. It was still ranked lower than the band's first 2 releases. Critics felt the first 2 were too similar, and now this album too different, a situation many artists seem to find themselves in. After touring, the band took a hiatus for about 3 years. During this time, some events unfolded that put the band's possibility of returning at all at risk. The Strokes had a problem many rock bands come across in their stardom: substance abuse. Not all members were on something, but Albert Hammond Jr. had some serious problems with hard drugs. This led to an intervention in 2009 in which they convinced him to go into rehab. Fortunately, he was able to overcome this issue and the band pressed forwards. They returned to social media and stated that they were working on a new album. It wouldn't be released until 2011. Angles, which was received generally well, but for the band, the process of making it was a nightmare. Julian was mostly absent for early recording of the album and would provide vague notes on what the band had been doing. They basically just went in and recorded separately. According to Nick, he wouldn't want to do another album if they recorded it the same way. Luckily for him, they approached the next album differently. Come Down Machine was received mostly positively, and is personally one of my favorite albums by the band. Going forward, the band released an EP in 2016 titled Future, Present, Past, and then 4 years later would release their latest album, The New Abnormal, which I think is their most musically progressive album yet, keeping the signature Strokes sound while still having all sorts of new ideas across the board. I couldn't be more excited for what comes next. The band has been extremely influential for over 20 years now, and I doubt the genre would sound the same and evolved the way it has without them. And hey, without them, I wouldn't be able to make a tribute to Room on Fire, which will be coming out next week. This has been Stemp. Thanks for watching.